I recently did 5 days of silence, and that's just no talking, right? And I wrote some stuff down of 7 reasons. Don't know why that means 7, but 7 reasons as to, or 7 things that it taught me, and I thought I'd share. I'm going to read from my journal and elaborate a little bit. Number 1, I put here, easier to be in a receiving frequency. Brackets, understanding how to surrender when someone is talking. So often we speak because we want to respond, as opposed to, often we listen in a way that we're not actually listening to the person, we're just listening to know how to respond. But it really taught me to actually listen to the individual. Sounds very basic, but the best word to describe it is surrender. You really surrender in the state of communication when that person is sharing whatever they're sharing. It could be something basic, could be something deep, and it moves on to number 2. So we'll go on to number 2. It all sort of links. So number 2 was I put ascension into a calmer state, which equals a higher consciousness state, right? And this is due to there being no anxiety to need to say the right thing, so that there's no pressure to speak. And because that seeps into the other one very nicely, because I have no pressure to speak, and I'm not trying to think about what I need to say, I can fully immerse myself into that individual, right? And it helps me be aware of what I can give off non-verbally. What energy am I giving out? Can they feel it? Making sure I'm doing things like looking at them into their eyes, into the gateway to their soul, not that intensely. And body language is facing the individual, open posture as much as I can, unless I'm doing something and it's not the right time to speak. But it was a very prominent thing. Number 2 in itself, just no anxiety to speak, because often I will get like I need to share my opinion, and I feel like a lot of people are like that. So it really calmed me down and just made me close my mouth and nose breathe whilst the person is speaking, right? Number 3, more awareness. I've sort of already touched on this. More awareness on non-verbal energy I'm giving out. So I've already spoke about that. That's pretty much self-explanatory. There's so much that we're giving out other than words. Words are limited. Even if you say the word consciousness or now, that is limited. So it's just about being aware of what energy you're giving out first and then speaking, or if you do need to just speak now, you don't have to use a lot of words. Just use the words that are basic. Don't need to be complex, as long as they're clear, you're speaking properly, and your intentions are in the right place, right? Number 4. This one was very interesting and very profound, actually. I've put here, people's tender judgments on the choice, my choice, to not speak. Brackets, even though comes from loving, conscious intentions. The reason I did this is to grow my consciousness, my journey to elevate myself and others around me. And this would involve things like them feeling ignored and voicing that. So they'll think that I'm actually ignoring them on purpose. I put here, taken personally, or believing I'm maliciously ignoring. So there's a couple scenarios. There was one with someone that I know, who I don't really speak to a lot, and she wasn't aware initially of that I was really doing it, and then I slipped up. There was a few times that I slipped up and I spoke, but I didn't even realise. I was like, oh shit, I just spoke, because it's just such a habitual thing. So I bumped into her and I was just like, oh hey, how's it going? And she was just like, oh, your friend said that you're supposed to be doing some 5 days of silence. And I was just like, oh shit, I just spoke. And then she sort of was really suspicious. She was just sort of like, she sort of thought that I was purposefully ignoring her which is odd, which I understand if you're not, it's kind of a semi-taboo thing, right, in a normal setting. And it was just really interesting. People's immediate thing is to think that I am ignoring them or taking it personally, and I do the same thing. If someone's giving me some weird energy, I immediately take it personally, instead of just looking at the situation as, oh, you're an individual that's probably got loads going on. If I bump into someone that's rude in a shop, I'm gonna be like, oh, she was rude to me, was I weird, what did I do, you know, what dickhead, you know, all that stuff. But really, they could have just slept really bad, they could just hate their job, they could have had someone die in the family recently and they might just be struggling a little bit with that, you know. It's not always you're just sort of an outlet for that, and sometimes people can't control that. But it was just interesting. It also seeped into my relationship with my girlfriend Ames. It was very difficult to communicate without words. Obviously, one of our strongest points in a relationship is communication, and without that, it was very tricky for her to you know, just to not be feeling ignored and stuff. And that's part of my fault too, because sometimes I'll get distracted and do my own thing and not give her the physical attention, because I was learning, you know, the physical attention that she also requires when she's talking. Sorry, I keep forgetting to look at the camera, I always look over here. And there was a point where she started to feel like she was being ignored and stuff, and on the 4th day she was sort of like, you don't have to do 5 days sort of thing. But I was just like, I sort of was miming a bit and was just like, you know, but I'm really true to this, so I'm gonna do the 5 days. But it was just a really interesting thing that it brought out a lot of that. I guess the whole thing in the relationship I wouldn't really call ego, but the feeling ignored, taking it personally, is ego, right? It's not like necessarily like a negative thing. A neutral statement. It is an attachment to the ego that you think I'm purposefully hurting you for not speaking. Interesting. Anyway, number 5. Patience in awaiting answers. They will come eventually. This is answers within things that I'm looking for in my life, but also I put here the process of other people's situations, and that I don't need to help, like in terms of with words, I don't need to help, because they often do figure it out on their own. It might be over an extended period of time, which is where I've gone on to say, but I also see the impact of some help. So if there's a situation, I can't really think of an analogy right now, but say if my girlfriend's going through something or my housemate's going through something, not speaking, you know, they might figure it out in a couple of days' time, but also me saying something in that time can also make them realize it now, and then it can help ascend through this mission of you know, this physical situation, which is just a passing moment, right? But also that it's okay if I can't be there, because people will figure it out. That, you know, people are very smart, and not to say that I didn't think that they were smart before, but like when you really see and really witness people just doing their thing, it's just great. So patience, just waiting, patience in awaiting answers. Number 6. The power of using clear words as a method of communication. Very basic. Just, obviously I wasn't speaking, but after I spoke, just making sure I'm using proper words, and as in, you know, like just the power of words as a means of communication. I think that seeped into the whole thing with the relationship with my relationship with Ames. It's quite important to let someone know, especially if you're sharing a space, living with someone. It's very important to share what you require as an individual. I'm going to do this now. Is that okay? Yes. Done. Sorted. Lastly, number 7. Emotional release / communicating through other means than verbal communication, right? So I'm a drummer, so I drummed a lot. I'm in a process right now where I'm studying jazz, and I'm trying to work on a specific stick grip. So I was drumming loads for hours, just sitting there, just doing on my practice pad. It was pretty cool. I cycled a lot, and that was quite a nice release of emotion. Even though I wasn't necessarily thinking, I'm angry, I'm going to cycle, or I'm happy, I'm going to cycle. It was just like a nice outburst. You don't need to have even thoughts, you think in words. So I wasn't cycling after thinking I'm going to cycle to emotional release. I would just do it. I would just be drawn to it more than sometimes when I'm speaking. Swimming as well, did the same, did a lot of swimming, wild swimming, or meditating. Obviously I meditate every day, try to do twice a day, and even though I wasn't talking, it would sometimes mean I'd be thinking a lot in words, so it just made me think about words a lot. But then meditating would really, I said meditating for clarity in overthinking. So if I started thinking loads, if I'd meditate, it would calm my mind so much, because I would be watching the mind and not identified with it, and I would just see it as a passing thought. Just doing is sort of the premise. There's probably a few more things that I've learned, but those 7 things were very, very profound for me. And I wanted to do 10 days, but I'm glad I did 5 days, because it was a new thing, not just for me, but for people around me. So now I know how to do things better next time. But I recommend you guys try this, even if it is just for a little bit, 3 days, 2 days, whatever, a day, just don't speak. It's really, really enlightening. It just makes you see things in a very different manner. I had to write out a little note towards like midway through saying like, I'm doing 5 days of silence. Why? And then turn over the page and it says why, for consciousness. So if I was in a place where I was with a stranger, like in the shop, and I really needed to communicate but I couldn't figure out how, I'd just show them that, and then it just sorts it out. They don't have to think that they're taking it personally and stuff like that. They just know, and it spreads the message of consciousness. It spreads the message of doing the silence thing. It's pretty cool. Thanks for watching, guys, and sorry about the whole noise and also not looking at the right place in the camera. I'm still figuring that out, but peace and love, everyone, and I'll see you around.